Man, oh man, it appears these WNBA players, they are nuts. They are absolutely insane, and they are continuing to try to play hardball with these WNBA owners in regards to the latest CBA offer made by the owners. Breanna Stewart absolutely slapped around that last offer.
Absolutely insane. That's how the video opens. And honestly, it's not hyperbole, because what we're watching unfold right now is a high-stakes game of chicken between WNBA players and team owners, with the entire 2025 season hanging in the balance. And Breanna Stewart just made it crystal clear: the latest offer from ownership, denied, rejected, not even close to good enough.
In the clown show, the circus act that is the WNBA CBA negotiations with the WNBPA, which is full of people who are compromised because they have deals with competitor leagues. Now, let's go over here. This was put out by Ramona Shelburne, right? And we have an article to get to with some comments that Breanna Stewart had to say, which lets you know that the players were not digging the last WNBA CBA offer made by the owners. Now, obviously, Athletes Unlimited started last week.
Here's what you need to understand about this CBA negotiation. The WNBA Players Association has been in talks with league owners for months now, and we just hit a critical moment. The owners submitted their latest collective bargaining agreement proposal on Friday. The executive committee held an emergency call on Sunday to discuss it, and Breanna Stewart, the WNBPA vice president, went public with her reaction. And it wasn't pretty. The proposal arrived more than 6 weeks after the players submitted their last offer. 6 weeks. That's how long the owners took to respond. And according to Stewart, when that response finally came, it barely moved the needle on the one thing that matters most to these players: revenue sharing.
WNBPA president Nneka Ogwumike was in attendance, and there was a meeting held with a lot of those players. Here it says Nneka Ogwumike and WNBPA staff went to Nashville to check in on Athletes Unlimited players alongside fellow executive committee members Alicia Clark and Brianna Turner, discussing ongoing CBA negotiations. Will be interesting to see what comes out of what a source described as an important pulse point meeting with a large contingent of WNBA players. Now, it being a large contingent of WNBA players is a key point. There's a large contingent.
Now, this is where it gets interesting. Athletes Unlimited, the league that's not paying big money, just started their season last week in Nashville. And who shows up? WNBPA president Nneka Ogwumike, along with executive committee members Alicia Clark and Brianna Turner. They're there for what sources described as an important pulse point meeting with a large contingent of WNBA players. Think about that for a second. Why would union leadership fly to Nashville to meet with players competing in Athletes Unlimited? Because those players represent the middle class of the WNBA. These aren't the Breanna Stewarts making big money from unrivaled or international contracts. These are the players who cannot afford a lockout. And union leadership knows they need to keep those players on board, because without them, there is no unified front.
Lockout. So they went there to meet with them, and I'm sure that was very important. And I'm sure a majority of those players do not want a lockout because they simply cannot afford it. You got Deja Kelly playing in that league. She already told y'all that she was scared and she could not afford a WNBA lockout because she is trying to secure a job in the league along with the slew of other players. Now we move forward here where it says WNBA.
Here's the reality check. Deja Kelly already went on record saying she's scared of a lockout because she's trying to secure her job in the league. Multiple Australian players said the same thing back in November and December. The idea that this players' association is one unified front, that's been a lie from the beginning. There's a fracture, and it's growing wider every day that passes without a deal. The veterans, your Nneka Ogwumikes, your Breanna Stewarts, your Napheesa Colliers, they can afford to hold out. They've got international contracts, they've got unrivaled money, they've got endorsement deals. But the majority of WNBA players, they're living paycheck to paycheck. A lockout doesn't hurt everyone equally, and that's a problem when you're trying to negotiate as a collective.
Progress that has taken way longer than needed. Now, at the end of this, you will hear out Breanna Stewart absolutely is not okay with this offer because the WNBA is not giving them what they want at this point. And Breanna Stewart absolutely slammed this offer. Here it says the executive committee for the Women's National Basketball Players Association held a call Sunday to discuss the WNBA's latest collective bargaining agreement proposal, which arrived on Friday. The EC wanted to really understand.
So let's break down what the owners actually offered, because the details matter here. According to sources familiar with the negotiations, the league's proposal didn't move much on the money side, but they did make concessions on what Stewart called minimum standard requirements, things like housing and facility standards. First-year players and players on minimum salary will be provided a one-bedroom apartment for the first 3 years of the new CBA. Developmental players get a studio apartment. Now, this is significant because the owners did not want to continue paying for player housing. They pushed back hard on this. But in the spirit of compromise, they agreed to it. And that's the key word here, compromise. The owners have been willing to give ground on multiple issues. The players, we haven't heard what they've compromised on yet.
Jay Melbourne and a bunch of Australian players who said they could not afford a WNBA lockout, and that's not what they wanted. I been knew y'all wasn't on the same page. Here it says, the WNBA's proposal, the league's first response to the players' latest offer, which came more than 6 weeks ago, didn't move much money-wise, Stewart said, but there were some minimum standard requirements that did come into play. That was important, Stewart added, because that means that the league heard us on things that matter to us. And it also means that the league and the owners have been willing to compromise. We are still waiting to hear what you players have.
The salary cap in this new proposal would rise to $5.65 million in 2026. That's up from the $5 million cap the owners proposed back in early December. Maximum salaries would start at about $1.3 million in the first year, climbing to almost $2 million by the end of the deal. Multiple players on each team would be eligible for that max salary. Minimum salary starts at $230,000. Average salary starts at $530,000. On paper, that sounds pretty good, right? Significant raises across the board. More players eligible for max contracts. Guaranteed housing for younger players. So why did Breanna Stewart slam this offer? Because none of that addresses the elephant in the room.
The WNBA's proposal in early December offered a $5 million salary cap and a max salary of about $1.3 million in the first year of the deal. A source close to the situation told CBS Sports that over the course of the proposed deal, the maximum salary will raise to almost $2 million, and that multiple players on each team will be eligible for the max salary. The minimum salary in this deal would start at $230,000. The average would start at $530,000. Now, hear what Breanna Stewart ultimately had to say about this offer, as she absolutely slammed it. This is what Breanna Stewart had to say, man. Time is of the essence. Stewart added that she doesn't know if there's a drop-dead date.
Revenue sharing. That's the non-negotiable. That's the hill the players are willing to die on. They want 30% of league revenue. The owners have refused to budge beyond 15%. And according to Stewart's comments, this latest proposal still doesn't close that gap. Listen to how she framed it. The league's response did not address the gap between the sides on revenue sharing. That's diplomatic language for they're still not giving us what we want. She went on to say, I think that both sides are very aware that this has gone on way longer than it needed to. But hopefully we can really start hearing each other, and they hear us on things that are non-negotiables. Translation, we don't care about the housing. We don't care about the facility upgrades. Those are nice, but they're trinkets. We want our share of the revenue, and until we get it, there's no deal.
Soon, I think that both sides are very aware that this has gone on way longer than it needed to, Stewart said. But hopefully we can really start hearing each other and they hear us on things that are non-negotiables. What are the non-negotiables? For them, it has been revenue sharing. They want 30% of revenue share. The WNBA is refusing to move on that. This is what you have to pay attention to in this entire thing. Right here. Right there.
Now, here's where the owners are coming from. And this is important context. The WNBA has historically operated at a loss. The league is subsidized by the NBA. When you're asking for 30% of revenue, you're essentially asking for 30% of a number that after expenses is often negative. The owners are saying, we're already losing money on this league. We're willing to pay you more. We're willing to invest in better facilities, better travel, better accommodations. But we cannot commit to a revenue share model that could bankrupt franchises. The players counter with, we're the product. We're the ones filling arena. We're the ones driving the ratings increases. We deserve to share in the upside. And they're not wrong about the growth. The 2024 season saw record attendance, record viewership, record merchandise sales. Caitlin Clark's rookie season brought unprecedented attention to the league. But here's the tension. Growth doesn't automatically equal profitability. And the owners are looking at the books, saying, we're happy to share profits when there are profits to share. But you can't ask for 30% of revenue when we're still operating in the red.
Revenue sharing. The owners have compromised on many, many things. We haven't seen anything the players have compromised on. The one thing the owners have stayed steady on is revenue sharing. We cannot go up to 30%. We absolutely will not. In fact, we can't go above this 15, but we are giving everyone more money. We are going to continue to pay for you guys' housing, which we didn't want to do. We're going to give on a lot of things. Breanna Stewart absolutely slammed that offer and basically said, look, all of that, the housing, all of the little things, yeah, that's cool. I don't care about keychains and trinkets. We care about revenue share. And therefore, this deal is denied. Get down in the comments and let me know what you think, man. Let's keep the vision.
So we're at an impasse, and time is running out. Breanna Stewart admitted she doesn't know if there's a drop-dead date where the league can no longer start the season on time if there's no CBA in place. But she made it clear that everyone knows they're running out of time. The 2025 season is supposed to start in May. We're already in the first quarter of the year. Training camps need to start soon. Free agency needs to happen. The expansion draft for Golden State needs to be scheduled. None of that can move forward without a CBA in place. And here's what makes this particularly precarious. Both sides have incentive to play hardball. The owners know that the longer this drags out, the more pressure mounts on the players who can't afford a lockout. Those middle-class players and athletes unlimited, they're going to start panicking as we get closer to May. The union leadership knows this, which is why they're flying to Nashville for pulse point meetings. But the players also have leverage. The league just had its best season ever. Momentum is building. Corporate sponsors are paying attention. This is the worst possible time for the WNBA to cancel a season. The owners know that missing 2025 could set the league back years in terms of growth and public perception. So who blinks first? That's the question. And based on Breanna Stewart's comments, the players aren't blinking yet. She essentially said, look, the housing stuff is nice. We appreciate that the owners are willing to compromise on minimum standards. But at the end of the day, we don't care about keychains and trinkets. We care about revenue share. And until you move on that, this deal is denied. That's a bold position to take. It's also a risky one because the longer this plays out, the more fractured the Players Association becomes. You've already got players on record saying they can't afford a lockout. You've got a clear divide between the stars who have alternative income sources and the role players who depend entirely on their WNBA salaries. And here's the thing about union negotiations. They only work when the union stays united. The moment ownership senses a fracture, they can exploit it. They can wait it out, knowing that eventually the players who can't afford to miss paychecks will start pressuring union leadership to take whatever deal is on the table. The owners have already shown they're willing to compromise on multiple fronts. They're paying for housing even though they didn't want to. They're raising the salary cap. They're increasing max salaries. They're improving facility standards. They're checking boxes on player demands. But on revenue sharing, they've drawn a line in the sand. And that's what makes Breanna Stewart's rejection of this offer so significant. She's saying, none of that other stuff matters if you don't give us revenue share. She's telling the owners, we're not going to be distracted by incremental improvements. We want a fundamental restructuring of how revenue is distributed. That's a massive ask. It's asking the owners to take on significantly more financial risk in a league that's still trying to establish long-term profitability. It's asking them to commit to a model where, in a bad year, they could be paying out 30% of revenue while operating at a substantial loss. From the players' perspective, they're saying, you're asking us to trust that you'll invest in the league's growth. But we want to be partners in that growth, not employees who get raises when you feel like it. They want skin in the game. They want to benefit directly when the league does well, not wait for owners to decide how much of that success trickles down to player salary. Both positions are understandable. Both positions are defensible. And that's exactly why this negotiation is so difficult. Here's what's going to happen next. The clock is ticking. We're probably looking at a deadline sometime in late February or early March, if the season is going to start on time in May. That gives both sides maybe 6 to 8 weeks to figure this out. In that time, you're going to see more meetings like the one in Nashville. Union leadership is going to keep checking in with players, making sure everyone stays on message, trying to prevent defections. You're going to see more public statements from both sides, each trying to control the narrative and build public support for their position. And at some point, probably when we're about 3 weeks from the point of no return, someone is going to make a move. Either the owners are going to come back with a revenue share number that's higher than 15% but lower than 30%, or the players are going to signal they're willing to accept something less than their initial ask. That's how these negotiations typically work. Both sides stake out aggressive positions. Both sides hold firm for as long as possible, and then when the deadline becomes real, they meet somewhere in the middle. But here's the wild card. Breanna Stewart and the other union leaders might actually be willing to sacrifice the 20. They might look at the long term and say, if we cave now, we're setting a precedent that hurts players for the next decade. Better to take the hit this year and force the owners to give us a real partnership. That would be an incredibly risky strategy. It could backfire spectacularly. The WNBA's momentum could stall. Casual fans who just discovered the league because of Caitlin Clark might lose interest. Corporate sponsors might get cold feet. And those middle-class players who can't afford a lockout might revolt against union leadership. But it's possible. And based on Stewart's tone, based on her willingness to publicly reject this offer and call out the owners for not moving on revenue share, it seems like the players are at least considering that option. So where does this leave us? We're watching a high-stakes negotiation play out in real time, with both sides dug in on their positions, with a ticking clock creating pressure, and with real consequences if they can't find common ground. The owners have compromised on housing, facilities, and salary increase, but they won't budge on revenue sharing. The players appreciate those concessions, but they've made it clear those aren't enough. Revenue share is the non-negotiable. Someone's gonna have to give. The question is who and how much, and whether they can figure it out before it's too late to save the 2025 season. Because right now, based on everything we're seeing and hearing, we're headed for a collision. And when that collision happens, it's the fans and the middle-class players who are gonna feel it most. So what do you think? Are the players right to hold firm on revenue sharing, or are they overplaying their hand? Are the owners being reasonable by saying they can't commit to 30% of revenue, or are they being cheap after a record-breaking season? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this is far from over, and how it resolves is going to shape the WNBA for the next decade.